Hello, I'm Robert from the Transpennine Trail National Office, and for this podcast, I'm joined by Marian and Barry Andrews from the Disabled Ramblers. The Transpennine Trail Partnership is committed to making the trail accessible for all users regardless of their mobility, and Marian and Barry have been instrumental in this mission that includes site visits with TPT partners to advise on measures to improve accessibility so everyone can enjoy the beauty and venture of the Transpennine Trail. Join us as we explore their work, the challenges they face, and the impact they're having in making the trail more inclusive. Hello, Marian and Barry. How are you today?
We're fine, Robert. How are you?
Yeah, we're all very good. Do you want to start by introducing yourselves and telling us a bit about how you got involved with the Disabled Ramblers?
We're both retired teachers, so have worked in education for all our working lives. During that time, our main hobby was hill walking, particularly in Wales. And that kind of started to come to an end when Barry's long-term health conditions started to really impact on his mobility. So we had to sort of look at different ways of doing things. Barry bought his first mobility scooter in 2010. This was a Class 2 mobility scooter, which is the type you would see around a shopping centre. But of course, this really didn't satisfy his need for getting out into the countryside. So it was really by chance that we stumbled upon the Disabled Ramblers. We were at a Motability show in Birmingham looking at vehicles basically to take his mobility scooter in. And there was a stand there that the Disabled Ramblers had. So we got chatting to somebody on the stand, had a very informative conversation about what they did, went away with some literature, and Barry joined the Disabled Ramblers in 2013. And in 2016, he purchased what's known as a tramper mobility scooter, which is a specifically designed off-road mobility scooter. And he then discovered that he could go way further than just going to the shops. He could get out on rough areas, in the snow, in mud, through water, and up hills, which really got him back into the countryside, but still in a different way, but an enjoyable way.
You live a little bit of a distance from the Transpennine Trail, so where do you do most of your tramping and walking?
Most of it tends to be around our caravan in Wales. And then we go on holiday to a holiday cottage and perhaps pick a place that has various routes that we, like Miles Without Stars routes, that we can actually do.
So when you're choosing places to visit and routes to explore, what are you looking for in terms of accessibility?
If it's a pre-planned route like a Miles Without Styles, I can read what their gradings are and then go off and probably do it without any problem, because the tramper is designed to do all the types of routes that are Miles Without Styles. If it's one I'm trying to find myself, I look for bridleways or footpaths that perhaps look interesting. And then I look at the maps, then I look at aerial views, like Google Earth, and see if there's any obvious obstruction to my passage. Because that's the biggest problem, is you can plan a route and then you find one step which I can't get up or down, or one narrow gate or stile or something I can't pass through, which gets very frustrating, as you can imagine.
Absolutely. So initiatives like the Miles Without Styles is critical then in minimising the amount of research that you're having to do.
Yes, basically somebody else has done that research for me, and if it says it's a route for some, I know I can do it. If it's a route for all, I know I can do it, because there won't be the issues of coming across a barrier or, as I say, a gate or something that I can't get through.
Brilliant. Marian, it's probably a good opportunity for us to let the listeners know what the Miles Without Styles initiative is. Do you want to explain what it is and what it involves?
The Miles Without Stars initiative was something that grades routes so that people with mobility scooters or mobility aids or things of that kind are clear about where there may be paths for them to access. So they're graded into 3 grades. It's for all, for many, and for some. And for each of those categories, there's a description that is nationally known, really, which also equates very nicely to the Disabled Ramblers' descriptions of routes as well. And the descriptions are basically that a route for all is suitable for a pushchair or an unassisted wheelchair. And that's because mainly the surface will be of tarmac or compacted stone, and any stones or anything on it will be less than 10 millimetres in size. And the gradients will never be more than 1 in 10, which is obviously important if you're propelling yourself in any way. Routes for many are routes that are really suitable for assisted wheelchairs or a more robust all-terrain type equipment.
Such as Barry's Tramper.
The surface could be stones up to 4 centimetres in diameter or less, and the gradients will be no more than 1 in 8. And then for paths that for some, these are mostly suitable for really robust all-terrain mobility equipment and off-road mobility vehicles. The stone surfacing may be less than 10 centimetres in diameter, but you may also find a few little steps, but they are less than 10 centimetres in height. But the slopes could be greater than 1 in 8. In fact, some slopes on Mars Without Stars paths we're aware of could be up to nearly as much as 1 in 4. But the whole of the premise of the Mars Without Styles is that there will be no inaccessible barriers on the way. So when you're selecting a route, you will know that you're selecting it really for surface and gradient, not because of barriers. But obviously you might come across a stock control gate that's easily accessible that might be on that path.
Brilliant. So you've talked about how you both got involved with the Disabled Ramblers. Do you now want to explain what the Disabled Ramblers do and what your roles are with them?
Basically, the Disabled Ramblers is a small charity that works across England and Wales to help make the countryside more accessible to people with limited mobility. It's a membership charity run completely by volunteers. And believe it or not, its origins date back to the 1990s, so it's not a new charity, and it first became known as the Disabled Ramblers in 2000 and was registered as a charity in 2004. So the charity itself has been in existence for over 20 years. There's 2 aspects really to the Disabled Ramblers work. The first is linked with raising awareness of the needs of people with limited mobility, especially with regard to access to the countryside. And we have quite a focus on the removal of man-made barriers such as step stiles, narrow gaps, narrow bridges. But we don't ask for tarmac everywhere. I think sometimes people think that something is only accessible if it's a tarmac or a boardwalk, and it's really important to understand that that is not what accessibility is about. And in order to achieve some of this work, we do work with quite a lot of national bodies. So we work with bodies like the National Trust, National Parks, National Trails, Natural England, Natural Resources Wales and Sustrans. Some of our members have engagement with local authorities. So, for instance, I'm a member of the Cheshire East Countryside Access Forum. So that's really where our kind of access work comes into. And obviously we're advising along the TPT as well at partnership meetings. The other aspect of the Disabled Ramblers charity really is the organisation of rambles. So these are rambles for people who use mobility scooters. We have an annual national ramble programme of 24 rambles, and these are organised into weeks of 4 rambles in 1 week. So it can kind of create a holiday week for people with mobility scooters if they choose to do it that way. So and to those rambles, we take 4 trampers that some of our members can use if they don't have one. So they can then ramble alongside members who bring along their own scooters that are suitable. For example, this year our ramble weeks are in Sussex, the North York Moors, Derbyshire, the Malverns, Pembrokeshire and Hertfordshire. All the rambles that we organise are tested and risk assessed. They're roughly between 5 and 8 miles long. And they're given a category grading of 1 to 2 or 3, and those category gradings roughly equate to the Mars Without Stars for all, for many, for some. And in addition to that, we do run individual rambles. Some local people run individual rambles in their local area, and those are called regional rambles.
Brilliant. Has there ever been rambles that include the TPT?
So back in 2023, Disabled Ramblers had a week of rambles in Derbyshire, in the Peak District in particular, and one of these rambles was taking in part of the Longdendale Trail. So we thought it would be a nice idea to invite Hannah along to see what we actually did on one of these rambles. So Hannah joined us back in May 2023 on a 6-mile ramble that had been organised. It was a circular ramble that set off from Torside Car Park. It took in part of the Longdendale Trail on the TPT. The weather wasn't brilliant, but it didn't prevent everyone from enjoying themselves. And I think Hannah certainly really enjoyed herself. And I would like to just read an extract from the blog that she wrote afterwards, because I think it says all about what people find when they come out rambling with somebody on a mobility scooter. It was this first-hand experience I found to be an eye-opener, as it showed to me that to be able to create an accessible route doesn't always mean smooth surfaces, as there are mobility aids available to enable users to get out into the more rural environment, tackling muddy sections, rocky terrain and inclines. It highlighted the importance that entrances, access barriers and good turning circles play to allow trampers to manoeuvre through the openings. Without these areas instantly become inaccessible.
Brilliant. That basically summarises what you were saying earlier on, doesn't it? Brilliant. Yeah. And I think listeners will be able to find that blog on our website at www.transpenninetrail.org.uk/TPT-blogs/. So what are your roles with the Disabled Ramblers?
So my role within the Disabled Ramblers is that I am a trustee of the charity, so I attend the committee meetings. The two of us have a specific role of contacting new members when they join to see if we can support them in any way and help them understand more about the work of the Disabled Ramblers. And we also have the role as being regional representatives for Cheshire and Snowdonia.
And I sort of collate routes into various regions, put them on certain apps that we use, and they're published on our website.
Brilliant. So people who are interested in suitable routes would go onto your website and there would be a page on it.
And find those routes, yes.
We use 2 mapping apps to record our routes, and they are always within the heading we put walking with wheels, because as you appreciate on mapping apps, it's sometimes quite difficult to find routes, and to find accessible routes is extremely difficult currently, because some of these mapping apps don't yet recognise that wheeling is kind of a specific activity in the countryside.
So how did you get involved in working with the TPT partnership to improve accessibility along the trail?
Our involvement with the TPT really came about through another member of the Disabled Ramblers who was working with Sustrans at the time as a volunteer, recording access barriers on a stretch of the TPT in Merseyside. He contacted us because he became extremely frustrated by the fact that many of these barriers that he was recording for Sustrans as part of their access barrier map, he was unable to access. This was back in late 2021. So from there, we did some research about the Transpennine Trail and realised how you were working through your partner groups. So from there, we looked at which partnership meetings would be the best ones for us to join, the ones that were closest to us. So we joined the Greater Manchester meetings and the Pennine meetings at the start of 2022, and we've been attending those ever since. So outside the partnership meetings, we are sometimes contacted by Mandy or Hannah. The most recent contact has probably been made to do with the Miles Without Stars initiative that we've given some input in. Mandy and Hannah and all the partners are very aware that we are more than happy to come out to site to give advice or whatever. An example of this would be that we have been out in Trafford with the Bollin Valley Partnership to look at some barriers at Station Lane. Last year, Hannah was asked by the Peak District National Park if we could go out and look at the chicane at Torside, which she had noted when she was on her ramble with us in 2023, that the vegetation made it quite restrictive for mobility scooters to get round a stone chicane. So we made a site visit in October, I think it was last year. The chicane was much improved. The vegetation had been cleared. So the passage for Barry's tramper through the chicane was way easier. But one of the things we did notice that where they had cleared some other work along the edge of the path, they had kind of left a gully right at the edge of the path. So that was impeding the swing into the chicane. So we reported that back, and that has now been fixed.
We mentioned earlier the Miles Without Stars grading scheme, and we know the TPT partnership is embarking on grading the whole 370 miles of the TPT for accessibility, and it's something that you've been involved in as well.
Yes, we have been. A few months ago, we went out to Warrington, starting off at the Ranger Hut in Statham Avenue, and we made our way west towards the Latchford Locks. As we went along, we photographed for your access control map the barriers that had been replaced, and we graded the path, which is mainly a path for all, but there are just a couple of inclines that make just a couple of short sections a path for many. So it's really exciting to know that there is a very good length of trail within Warrington that is now barrier free and basically a Miles Without Styles Walk for All. And we're hoping to return sometime in the near future to actually grade the rest of Warrington, working towards the Eastern Statham Avenue Ranger Hut to the border with Trafford.
So during a site visit, what are you looking for and what are you testing during the visit?
Obviously, site visits are the best way of demonstrating the difficulties encountered by mobility scooters. First of all, believe it or not, is finding parking. In other words, you can't access a site if you can't park your vehicle.
Absolutely.
In a space big enough to be able to get your mobility scooter out of your vehicle or to unhook your trailer if you brought your scooter on a trailer. And that's very often something that's often forgotten about accessibility for people with mobility scooters is parking. Then we would be looking at the general surface of the path and perhaps advising on whether we thought the surface was suitable or whether there needed to be any changes made to the surface. If there were barriers around, we'd be looking at the types of barriers and offering suggestions about how the barriers could be improved, particularly if they were restrictive in any way. The other thing that is really important is that we will be looking at manoeuvring space on the approach and exit to a barrier, as well as the surface through a barrier, because very often people think, oh, the barrier gap is wide enough or whatever, but they may have some posts either side of it. But if the surface of the path through the barrier happens to have a cross slope or whatever, that will tip your machine towards one of the posts. So surfaces going through the barriers are very important.
Yeah, that seems very obvious, but often is overlooked, isn't it?
Yeah.
So how do you think your work with the TPT has impacted the accessibility on the trail?
Well, there's certainly been improvements in the accessibility on the trail. And I think certainly from the meetings, the partner meetings that I attend, I think there is a greater understanding of what is required to make the trail accessible.
Some sections of the trail I've used, I know I can get on now and travel along them without suddenly coming across an impassable barrier.
So what are your aspirations for the TPT?
To me, it would be a trail that would be accessible from end to end, that I could take my mobility scooter on at any place and get off at any place and get all the way along it if I needed to.
Brilliant.
And once the Miles Without Styles accessible mapping layer is complete, it will give people a really good idea of where they will be able to take their particular mobility aid. In other words, they will know clearly that if they only have a self-propelled wheelchair, that they will be able to find surfaces for all, whereas somebody like Barry, who has an all-terrain mobility scooter, will be easily able to see, well, the routes that are for some may be more challenging than ones that for routes for all, so that might appeal to him.
So how can listeners get involved or support the work of the Disabled Ramblers?
Well, anyone can get involved. It's not just a charity for people with mobility issues. You can find out more about the Disabled Ramblers by looking at our website at www.disabledramblers.co.uk. We also have a very active Facebook page where members and non-members share where they are rambling or issues they have about their machines or issues they have about access.
Well, the other thing is we are always looking for volunteer help to help run the rambles that we do run. The more people we have helping and assisting with the rambles, it helps everything go much more smoothly. And if you need to find out how you can volunteer, again, look at the website and there's a contact us button on there, which should allow you to contact to find out more.
Brilliant. So what's been the most rewarding part of your work with the Disabled Ramblers and the TPT?
From the point of view of working with Disabled Ramblers, the most rewarding part is the fact that you can see people really enjoying themselves within the rambles that you go out on. And I think also it's really, really rewarding when you perhaps worked hard to work with somebody to make an improvement and the improvement has come about and they're really keen to show you that they've taken on board what you said and have moved things along. I'd just like to say how advantageous I've found the TPT partnership meetings, because not only do I feel that I can contribute to the meetings at the time, it's also enabled me to build up relationships with people from other bodies such as Sustrans. So we do quite a lot of work with Sustrans where they contact us to ask us to come out and look at some other access issues that are beyond the TPT. It's also helped us to touch base with somebody from the British Horse Society as well, where we were able to help her understand a little bit more about access in the countryside for people on mobility scooters.
And do you have any memorable experiences or moments from your time with the Disabled Ramblers that you'd like to share?
With the Disabled Ramblers, my most interesting experience was when my scooter broke.
Oh, no. Where was that?
On the top of the Quantock Hills.
Oh,
we were out on a Disabled Ramblers ramble, and we always take a trailer with us, which has a portable toilet, etc. on it, but it also doubles as an emergency rescue vehicle. It's towed by another tramper.
Yeah.
And my rear suspension arm broke, and I was basically marooned at the top of the hill. So we had to put it on the trailer, spread everything else that was normally on the trailer around other people, and then we managed to get off the hill. That was probably the most memorable.
So how long a journey was it to get off the hill?
Probably about 2 miles. Too much to get off without help.
Yes, you won't forget that experience in a while, will you?
No.
So I think we're coming to the end of our podcast. It's been absolutely fascinating. I've really enjoyed learning more about the Disabled Ramblers and their involvement with the Transpennine Trail. Is there anything else you'd like to add or any closing thoughts before we finish?
Well, I think as we discovered, it's only when you cannot access the countryside on foot that you realise how inaccessible some places are, even though a mobility scooter user has the same right of access as a walker. Obviously, there is always going to be some areas that are going to be inaccessible to a mobility scooter user due to the natural terrain, but there are still many areas inaccessible due to access control barriers. So even though progress is being made, there's still plenty of progress to be made.
Absolutely. And let's hope that the work that the Disabled Ramblers and the TPT are doing together, and the Disabled Ramblers in other parts of the country as well, continues to bear fruit. And with that in mind, I think that's a positive aspirational note on which to finish. So thank you both for a fabulous, informative podcast. I'm sure our listeners will really enjoy listening to it and learning about accessibility, which many of us just take for granted. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
Well, I hope that during this podcast we've shed some light on the importance of accessibility and the incredible efforts being made to ensure that everyone, regardless of their mobility, can enjoy the beauty of our countryside. If you're interested in supporting the Disabled Ramblers or getting involved, please visit their website at www.disabledramblers.co.uk or check out their Facebook page for more information. And if you want to find out more about accessibility and Miles Without Styles on the TPT, you can visit our website at www.transpenninetrail.org.uk/accessibility/. Thanks again to Marian and Barry for sharing their journey with us. And to our listeners, thanks for tuning in. Until next time, stay safe and keep exploring. Goodbye.